Welcome to Brightly You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul-driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Amy, sorry about that. We just had a false start. Totally my fault.
And my face was like, what have you done?
What just happened? I should have kept recording because that was fun. Hey, how you been?
Yeah.
how you been talking to yourself lately? It was gonna be how I was gonna open the show. Now I kind of bungled that one. I'm gonna have some negative self-talk later.
Do not have negative self-talk. And I will tell you why, because my mother showed up
after the last episode.
Yeah.
Message from the grave.
Right. I have these cards. My mom made these cards. Well, she didn't make them herself. She wrote the words and someone else made the cards. So, typically I'll just kind of shuffle through them and pick one out and look at it. And, this one is actually one of my favorite things that she ever said. And I heard her say it in person at a talk. You will never leave you. You will never divorce you. You will never die on you. Be your own best friend. Love, honor, and cherish yourself. And I just thought that went, that's basically so much of what we were talking about last episode. And I love that. Cherish yourself.
Ooh.
Yeah, that just made me, it just kind of made me all warm. And so even though I'm not 100% great at not having negative self-talk and contempt and defensiveness and stonewalling, I'm aware of it. And I'm also aware of that I am in relationship with myself, right?
Well, and the piece that caught my attention the most this time hearing it is the best friend piece.
Yes.
And I think the core thing when it comes to a best friend isn't similar interest, isn't necessarily past history or whether or not you have fun or what you do with each other, but it's someone you trust.
Right.
And so
100%.
After we talked about self-forgiveness, you said you wanted to switch the episode and you wanted to do this one on something.
Yeah. So first of all, I was going to talk about how to be alone, like how to be alone with yourself, blah, blah, blah. And then I thought to myself, yeah, I'm pretty sure everybody's pretty effing tired of it and they know how to be alone. And if they don't know how to be alone yet, they don't want to know how to be alone, right? So I just thought, Amy, read the room. And so exactly, you want to trust your best friend. And so my initial question to you, Tracy, and to everyone, do you trust yourself?
Absolutely. You were expecting sarcasm.
I was expecting sarcasm.
So one of my jokey talking points is one of the truest things about me. It was a huge self-awareness moment for me a couple of years ago. I actually came up with it when trying to write a dating profile. And the about me is I get through life on sheer tenacity. That requires a huge amount of trust, right?
Wow.
And self-awareness to know. And my willingness and interest in beginnings, right? That I love to start new things, new jobs, new things. And I have to trust I'll figure it out. And if I don't, then it's just not right for me and I'll figure out the next thing. So that is one thing I'm pretty thankful to have. But what is trusting yourself? What does that look like to someone who maybe can't unequivocally be like, yeah, I do?
Well, I think some people, I would guess that some people might even be like, what are you talking about? Like, of course I trust myself, but actually what I want to get to is like, do you trust the little voice inside of you? So when sort of like last episode, when we were talking about that voice inside, that critical voice and stuff like that, but I am actually talking about how do you know the difference between like what's good for you, your intuition, your higher self, and your ego, who's either like trying to get through this next moment or trying to keep you safe by keeping you held back. So that little voice, like, have you ever listened to that little voice and it's betrayed you?
Dramatic pause for an audio podcast. Wow. I don't know.
Okay, so I have, and yes, it has. So that's that little voice inside of me that used to say, you deserve this. This
Ooh.
is something you should buy because you work hard and
Oh.
you deserve this. And look at all that crap you had to go through all those years and you deserve this. And so I would listen to that voice, and then that voice betrayed me, or I betrayed myself because then that just accumulated debt, right? That was not intuition or my higher self. That was ego talking to someone because it was feeling discomfort, right?
So I
And
think I overthought the question.
Oh,
because
okay. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how betrayal, I was thinking of betrayal on a much larger scale and much
Yeah.
more nefarious and kind of plotting and planning and like a big conflict, huge,
No.
major moment in the movie where everybody's aghast, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out how I would have done that, because in my moments where I've disappointed myself, I knew better and I knew I wasn't taking action. And as you're saying, this stuff about how, you know, you deserve this, or just like not listening to the inner guidance that knew better, is the betrayal. So yeah, I've betrayed myself a whole freaking bunch.
Okay.
In
Yeah. We're
really
not
big
talking
ways.
huge
Yeah.
betrayals. We're talking just like those little soup cone of betrayals.
Oh, I mean, I've done both. I was just thinking of betrayal as like I plotted and planned it, right? Like I set
Yeah.
myself up to fail, because some people do that, right?
Oh, I do think that what happened to me was setting myself up continuously to fail, right? And it was an ongoing thing. And the deeper I got into the fail, the louder the voice got, right? To keep me there.
I just had a huge moment of realization. I'm going to turn focus on me for a second. Just, I don't want to lose the thought. I want to go back to what you were sharing. And thank you for the moments of vulnerability you just shared too. Betrayal could also look like avoiding and not participating in life and skipping experiences.
Yes. So it's almost like that stonewalling that you were talking about last episode.
Yeah, this is gonna be a real comfortable conversation today. Let's talk about you some more, Amy.
Well, listen, some of that is me as well. But so I want to get back to the little voice.
Ego and intuition.
Yeah, I want to get back to the little voice. So like also, so yeah, has it betrayed you? Has it helped you? And did you hear the difference when it did those things?
Mm-hmm.
So do you like, okay, so let's think about, where does ego live for you?
It has a home. Where does ego live for you?
Well, I feel like ego comes from, it feels like ego comes from just my head. If I think about it, it feels like ego is up here. But sometimes ego is also in my solar plexus, because that's sort of where I'm if I feel discomfort, that's where I feel
Oh,
that.
I just heard something on spiritual TikTok that might resonate then.
I love this. What?
They said if you feel it, and again, this isn't scientific, I didn't fact check this, but if you feel it in your gut and your throat, it's intuition. If you feel it in your chest and your head, it's anxiety. And I'm wondering if that's kind of similar.
Yeah, I bet it is, because I would definitely feel that ego would speak to anxiety, because ego wants to keep us safe.
But it's one of those things that, like, if it's in your head, it's a
Yes.
thought. It's not a feeling.
Right. It's not a feeling, but it can create a feeling. I think that because when I heard you deserve this, I was like, damn right I do. Right. I've done a lot. I do deserve that. But then when I think about intuition, that I don't think of chest. That is, I don't.
No, it was chest and head was anxiety.
No, I know that. I know.
Throat.
But right. But okay. Yes, I heard what you said, but sometimes intuition does feel like it's my heart, not my chest. I'm not feeling that anxious feeling, but it does feel like it's my heart, but it's lower. It's also lower. And it feels like, so for me, ego is definitely like, you should do this thing or you should not do this thing. Whereas intuition is almost like a picture or something like that. I can't actually explain it.
So I'm going to give an example. So recently one of my friends, something happened where earlier in the day she thought, oh, I should unlock the front door screen door. Just out of nowhere. I should unlock that so that we don't get locked out of the house. She was like, I'll do it later. Why am I going to get locked out of the house? Flash forward to the door, a different screen door, the other screen door, neither of which they have a key for. It's a new house, getting locked accidentally and them not being able to open it and having to call a locksmith and spend money. So in that moment, her ego was like, why are you thinking about that? Don't be crazy. Don't be overly concerned. Don't be over analysis, whatever. Like, we'll do it later. It's not a big deal. Had she trusted her intuition, right? So in hindsight, she can be like, well, of course, you know, you're thinking about safety of your home and like whether or not you're going to locked out. And I was like, no, it was future you screaming to past you, we can avoid this. We can avoid this. Just do this one thing. And you like heard that faint little whisper and your ego was like, why would I do that? Like, how many times have we had that thought?
Oh, so many times. I can think of a million times of where it's almost like this flash. And sometimes I have listened to it, that flash. And then I'm like, okay, I will do that right this second. And then it's paid off. And then other times it's exactly like what you just said, this flash. And then the other voice goes, that's never happened to you before. Why would it happen now?
And it's the times where you don't listen that you remember. And it's the times you do listen where, although you might get the payoff, you might not know what you avoided. Right.
That's
so
true.
Like sometimes I'll just have this thought, like, don't take this way home you usually take home. And as much as I believe in intuition and, you know, what we preach here and what we talk about, sometimes I'm like, don't be paranoid. Like, what are you talking about? And then I end up with a freaking flat tire because a nail got stuck in the side of my tire wall, which is so random and weird, right? Like, so it wasn't like this huge thing, but it was like something in me knew, right? Like, it's so easy to also reflect back and be like, God, intuitively, I knew not to do this, but it's like,
yes,
I did know. And I'm frustrated at myself because I recognize and know the feeling and I still paid attention to the ego.
So you did recognize the feeling. That was my question. Can you hear the difference, like, or feel the difference?
Oh yeah. For my intuition. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
I think I do. I feel like I haven't been listening to my intuition as long as you have, even though I'm older than you.
Wait. Go back to our signs episode that maybe I think it's intuition a little too much.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this could really go both ways here, Amy.
Yeah, I think that for a long time, I think that when you're sort of in the throes of any kind of addiction, it's really hard to listen
That, yeah.
or hear intuition. And so even if you could discern it, you don't, because the addiction is the thing that's
An addiction.
important
Mhm.
and ego wants you to stay there. I don't know why, because it's not keeping you safe, but ego thinks it is. It's like, this
Well,
is what we're doing.
I brought it up a couple of shows back, but it's that present day fallacy or present mind fallacy, where
Mhm.
in the moment feels like it weighs greater importance than future you. So I joke all the time about today, Tracy, tomorrow, Tracy, and past Tracy and all the messes and what they ignore and what they do and don't do. But there are some moments when I have to get really honest with myself that this has now happened more days than not, right? That you can get time
Yeah.
blindness in life, right? So I've established certain markers to double check when it comes to certain things and certain behaviors, and how much have I been like, I'm not going on a walk today? How much have I been, I'm not doing XYZ, or I am doing XYZ, right? So like
Mhm.
one of my more recent ones is I had set a goal in February, made zero movement on it, absolutely nothing, and for good reason. But those day-to-day reasons build up, and then here you are, and I look at my daily Wordle. I've been playing the Wordle for 90 days as of today. I've played it for 90 days straight. It's a silly little game, takes me a minute in the morning, right?
It brings me so much stress. I can't even stand it. I played Wordle one day in a row.
But so what I like about those stats though, and why I use it as my
Yeah.
marker, is had I started my goal, I'd be 90 days into it.
Right.
For some reason, the countdown things on my phone, or having a date, or how many days until, how many days since, and stuff like that, that's not enough, because I stonewall, anxious avoid, present day fallacy, kind of it, don't pay attention to my intuition, all about my ego. But for some reason, when I look at it, I'm like, you were able to play the Wordle for 90 days, but you didn't do this, right? Like, are we going to make it 91 days, right? Like, so I do get into that listening to the ego in the day to day more often, right? So, I mean, I think why you feel, or why I might be more experienced at recognizing my intuition, is I've been doing cognitive behavioral therapy on myself, or using the tools for it for a really long time. So we talked about in the last episode, but that ability to stop a thought and reflect on whether it's true or not, or where it's coming from. And so when I have those thoughts like, oh, don't do this, or hey, do this, I recognize if it's out of place or not. And then I ask myself why, right? And then sometimes I just got to trust my gut, right? That like, there is no reason why or why not. We're going to trust the gut, right?
I think that's really important. That you do question that. Like I told my middle child, I was like, anytime you think you have a good idea, call me, so that I can be like the higher self coming in to
I love
say,
that.
is this a good idea? Like, don't you wish we all had that? Like, oh, hey, here's an idea I had. Let me just give this my higher self a call.
So I mean, I think that's the huge thing between ego and intuition though, is like an accountability partner.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us call our actual, external to us best friends before making a decision? I mean, and then you do the bad thing anyways, or what you were going to do anyways. But getting
Well,
that,
listen,
that
when
check.
you do have an addiction and you finally decide to do something about it, you have a partner that you talk to every single day, at least for like 90 days. And then it's like once a week or whenever you need it, right? You have this person who supports you and
So
literally talks
how
you
can
through
you
it.
get to that point though of trusting yourself?
Well, I do think it comes down to, first of all, you have to, anytime you do have, if you don't trust yourself, if there's been too many things in a row where you're like, oh, this is not working for me, listening to my voice in my head, I think you have to stop and question it, just like what we were talking about. I do think you have to question. I think you have to be able to say, is this something, am I feeling a discomfort? And this thing that I think is a good idea will just sort of make that feel better in the moment. Is it feeling better in the moment? Is that my goal? Or, like we talked about last episode, going deeper into this and finding the root cause.
Mm.
And that's not easy and it's not fun.
So
but
I think
yeah,
we can start though with one of the assessments that we brought about when we first kind of, equated our internal self to a business, right? That as part of that SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, I think a trust exercise would be great there.
yeah,
Where your strengths would be, this is where I absolutely can and have been successful in trusting my intuition and my ego, right? Like they're a match. Weaknesses would be those areas where you have to have that brutal honesty of, I have not been making good decisions and I should enlist external support.
I should get a sponsor.
Right? Opportunities are areas where, I think I could trust myself here more. I think my ego is squashing my intuition a little too much, right?
Yes.
And then your threats are like what is emerging as a threat in your life. So especially as someone like you've shared a lot about your issues with spending and things like that. You probably aren't at the same place now with your trust with that you were when it started, right? Like you've probably trust yourself a little bit more because you have tools and you have support and the signs.
Absolutely.
But that also means you are aware of what the threats can be, what your triggers are, what some behaviors where maybe, this is emerging as a problem in my life and I shouldn't trust myself as much anymore.
I, before the pandemic, before my mom died, my sister and I went to Las Vegas. This is after I have faced my addiction, gone through, it's basically sort of the same 12-step process with Debtors Anonymous as it is with Alcoholics Anonymous. They use the same tools, sponsor, everything. I'm also going to therapy, right? So I'm actually past these things and have been working in the world with money just fine. I don't know why I said yes to Las Vegas, because I'd never been to Las Vegas. I had no idea. I get to Las Vegas and it's noise and money and clinking and clanking and just put $20 in and then you get a free drink and just do this and just put $20 more in and then you get this. And I'm like, I was so stressed out almost the entire trip. And there were times when it was just like, no, I have to take myself out of this situation. I need to go meditate in the room. Like that's just, so that was like putting, I don't know, an alcoholic in a distillery or something. It was, I can't believe that I put myself in that. And so now though, it's not like I beat myself up over it. I didn't know. Now, if I had to go to Las Vegas for something, I'd be like, that's fine. I am not walking into, I'm just walking through.
You have an awareness of what the threat can be and how to tackle it.
So that was such a huge threat.
So I think, we started by asking, do you trust yourself? And I had a resounding yes. And I was trying to think about the people who don't trust themselves, and not because they've identified situations that you do, but it's either been ingrained in them through childhood or whatnot, but maybe some sort of codependency where they just have a learned helplessness and they let other people make all their choices and their decisions for them.
That is a really good point, because how can you trust yourself if you've never had to trust yourself?
And if your external supports are constantly telling you, oh, you can't do this, you're not mature enough to do this, right? I used to, I worked at a company where it was just 12 men and me. And they were owned by a very conservative based person. They were all, a lot of them had worked together, gone to church together, had a lot of very similar conservative beliefs. And a young man started fresh out of college and he was dating and he was trying to court a particular girl that he had gone to college with. And this girl's father required any boy that was interested in courting her to date the father first.
Oh yeah, yes, I remember.
I've shared this story with you before.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that because these two people didn't even know if they liked each other enough to date yet. Like
Right.
he wasn't asking to be her boyfriend. It wasn't that they were close. It's that he had met her on some soccer camp thing
So
and wanted to get to know her
didn't
more.
trust his daughter to make the right decision.
Exactly. And so that is what all the men in the lunch break room, when we would talk about this, would bring up. And I was raised the complete opposite, where I had immense freedom and trust. And like, you got to figure this out. And when you're 18, you're going to move out. So you got to know what to do. Right. So I was on the other end of the spectrum and successful at it too at that point. And so they kept bringing that up, like, well, it's our responsibility to keep her safe. And I said, no, you're going to die someday. Might be tomorrow, might be today. I'm not trying to put this on you. You cannot guarantee. You need to trust, you need to instill in her the ability to make good choices and to have integrity and to pick a good partner, right? Like you have to teach her these things, and then you have to trust her and so that she can trust herself too.
That's the hard thing. I think,
Yeah.
and I think that I wonder, okay, this is going to go way out there. I'm not sure if I can even defend this statement that I'm going to say, but it's almost like, okay, so here's the dad who felt obviously he was the only person who could be trusted in any of this situation. And that person can't be trusted, right? So then I'm wondering about ourselves in that situation when ego takes over so much that the ego is like, well, clearly we can't trust this person and I have to make all the decisions. And that feels monumental to get past.
And it's such a patriarchal society thing too,
Yes.
right? And so I kind
Yes.
of feel like as women, we're kind of faced with that, having to prove ourselves so much externally that then we feel like we have to prove ourselves to ourselves, right? Like we don't believe that. I think that's why ego takes over and we can't trust ourselves, is we're so used to being told we can't do it.
But I will also say that I think if you are at the point where you're like, is this the voice that I should be listening to? And you can actually question that voice. That if you say to yourself about this thing, like, you should do this. So then you're saying to yourself, is this a voice I can trust? Is this for immediate discomfort? Is this for my highest good? And if this voice comes back with yes, then I think you should be able to say, how is this for my highest good? Or how could this be for my highest good?
Have that discernment.
Yeah. And not just, I deserve it. Right.
I think that's my problem with certain online tarot card readers that read for the collective. And when they say things like, does this resonate? And we talked about this in the signs episode.
Yes. Yes.
Well, this is telling me what I want to hear. So absolutely it resonates. My beloved is on his way to me and we're going to reconnect, even though I don't know anybody that's single. And so I like that idea of questioning the stuff you're overly agreeing with, the stuff that you're like, oh yeah, this is good. This is good for me. And asking, like developing, I think you called it like an inner guidance system for how you can weed through it and know and get better at those split decision trust moments, but actually give yourself time to process before you trust.
I think that, we trust. So just the inner guidance system, I actually don't know if I verbalized it. It's what I wanted to kind of call this, your inner guidance. But we, for the most part, trust our phone's guidance system. It tells us where to go, even though sometimes it's wrong. It never gets my sister's house right.
Build
it's always
spiritual GPS.
Yes, exactly. So I was like, you're here. I'm like, no, I'm not. I know I'm not. This is not right, but I'll find it from here. Thanks. But if we can get to that point, we do have guidance. We do have inner guidance. that does want to help us and not just keep us safe. In fact, it wants to push us. It wants to like get out of the nest, have a little
What
danger.
So when you said, like the spiritual guidance system, kind of similar to the phone GPS,
Yeah.
I pictured in the Harry Potter books and movies when Ron is given the Deluminator. And here he thinks it's just cool because he flicks what looks to be like a metal lighter, and it sucks up all the lights. And then he flicks it again, and all the lights go back to the lamps and the lights in the room. But then he gets separated from his friends, and he can't find them, and he doesn't know where they are. And here, this little ball of light appears in his chest, and he decides to follow it. And Harry gives him crap about it, but it was a visual representation of trusting his intuition, that he just knew that little ball of light would lead him back to his friends, and it did, right? So you have to I feel like doing these practice exercises, although it feels silly in the moment or maybe like it's analysis paralysis, right? We don't want you to go that far with it, but you have to get to the point where you have a little ball of light. I think that's, when you said you feel like I've been doing this longer than you, I think I just have that little inner ball of light already. Like I have my guidance system set, and sometimes I ignore my GPS and it's rerouting. That's going to happen. And it does happen. But the more speed bumps you hit because of that, or the longer your destination is, the better you'll get at trusting it.
So this is something kind of off the wall. But what's helped me trust my intuition more is actually doing, I know you were talking about online tarot readers who read for the collective, but tarot has actually helped me trust my intuition more. I do a tarot card of the day, Monday through Friday. I do a live on Facebook. And so I better be trusting my intuition, because sometimes cards come up that maybe on first glance have nothing to do with each other, and I have no idea what it's saying. And maybe even I've forgotten what this particular card, what the traditional meaning of it is. But when I just relax into my intuition, I just create this whole thing around it, and it comes out. So it's sort of like intuition boot camp for me.
And we have a whole episode on how to use divination tools yourself.
Yes.
And I have no problem with people requesting readings. I just feel like there's so many for the collective. And then when I look at their collective, 75,000 people have seen this. And I just question.
Yeah. Mine is like 5.
How many people is it really trying to reach, right?
And so, I'm not reading people. What I'm reading is the energy for the day.
Right.
And that's how I say it. But the point is that I'm pushing myself into my intuition so that I understand what my intuition feels like more, and that I trust it more.
And so that's the difference between those huge collective tarot card readers. It's not so much them and what they're doing. It's when you get that feeling, is it ego or is it intuition, right? Your response, whether you're doing it for yourself or someone's doing it for you, or it's a large collective reading, your guidance system in that situation is understanding your reaction to it and asking those questions you brought up.
Really good point. Understanding your reaction to it.
I love that. Well, if this episode spoke to your soul, share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast, or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.